Vincent stood at the exit of the prison and took a slow, steady breath as he prepared himself for what might be on the other side. In his mind, this all seemed like a setup by the new Supreme Council chair for some sort of ambush. But at the same time, if he burst out there with his magnum at the ready, and he was wrong, there was a chance he'd completely ruined the new trust he'd gained. He decided to keep the magnum holstered then, and opened the door to the main estate. The hall was empty. He glanced around for a moment, then stepped out, the door into the prison closing behind him. So far, no ambush. He walked down the hall towards the larger common room that seemed to be the focal point of the estate. As he got closer, he could see the lighting was a bit dim, and his hand itched to grab his magnum. But dim lights didn't have to mean some sort of ambush. Hopefully. He stepped into the room and looked around for a moment, ready to fight any of the wardens who might lay in wait. But instead, he found Kuyina sitting on one of the lounge chairs arranged around the coffee table. Well, not coffee. Same idea. She was wearing some sort of red and white dress. Had she been wearing that earlier? No, definitely not. It seemed to be designed to accent the red and white kabuki makeup the Xeno wore on her stony face. When she saw him, she smiled and waved him to the seat next to her. There were 2 drinks on a tray on the table. So that was it. He nodded slowly. Poison. He'd play along for now. As he walked into the room and took a seat, he realized there was some sort of music playing quietly in the background. It didn't hurt his ears, which was rather nice. It seemed like some sort of jazz, or maybe blues, but just instrumental. Music that doesn't give me a headache. How nice. He commented, and nodded at Kuyina. He better call her Vera, though, so he didn't reveal that he'd figured out her plan. She smiled at that and nodded. I had to do some analysis of your audible range, but they seem to fit within it nicely. It lacks some of the higher ranges, but it's still very pleasant. He nodded in response and then motioned a hand at the 2 drinks before them. And these? Since your diet matches that of the dragons, I had a great deal of selection available to me. What I chose has a mix of distilled grain alcohol, juice of the bloody Nikwa fruit, and powdered Yurma flour. The name of the fruit is just because of the appearance. It's not really bloody. She laughed a little. So, which one is mine? He asked as he looked at the reddish drink. Neither. I made them both the same. So she'd poisoned both and had an antidote on hand. Or perhaps already in her system? She was clever about this. Vincent shrugged and picked up the drink closest to him. He was about to drink when he saw her lift her own in a toast. To new friendships and open-minded thinking. Vincent raised his own glass to that and added, to new drinks and no hangover. Which made the Urvesh woman laugh a little as she went to sip her drink. When he took a sip of his own, he found it to be quite pleasant. It was like blood orange juice with some sort of spice or kick to it. Ginger? Well, not ginger, but something that tasted similar. Then he felt the burn as he swallowed and had to resist the urge to cough. There was the grain alcohol. He arched his eyebrows and moved to set the glass back down, when he noticed that Vera was downing her entire drink. Not wanting to be outdone, he quickly kicked his head back and finished his own drink. She likely wanted to make sure he got enough of whatever the poison was in his system, but he still wanted to keep up appearances. He was just a clone, after all. Ah, such a nice drink, don't you agree? She examined her glass, empty, aside from a bit of fruit pulp stuck to the sides. Then she rose and collected his glass from his hand, as she walked to the bar along the side of the room. Was it to your liking, or should I prepare something else? That was to my liking. It's kind of funny we have a fruit with a very similar name on my home. Similar taste as well, or... I think it is. If you're making them, I'll certainly have another. He heard her laugh from the bar. I might be the most powerful Urvesh in the Union at the moment, with a very accomplished work record and a great many skills. But making drinks is not one of them. It's just a selection off the bar's automated menu. If I tried to make these by hand, I highly doubt they'd come out so nice. Ah. He turned around then, and watched her retrieve the 2 new drinks from the bar and head straight back towards him with them. She didn't have time to slip anything into the drink. Then either the house computer was in on it, which he doubted, or she just spiked the first round. He felt all right. Perhaps it was slow acting. She handed him the new drink and nodded. As she sat back down, he took a smaller sip. Tasted just the same. The bar certainly saw a lot of use with Latero. She sounded a bit sad as she mentioned that. He managed to keep his behavior in check for work purposes, but I fear his liver might have given out in another few years, even if he hadn't been assassinated. So you do believe it was an assassination? Vincent asked. Yes. As mentioned, the method is similar to a sort of ritualistic suicide some Yervesh commit, but I knew him better than that. That's right. The dishwasher had a glass with your prints on it from a few days before all that happened. The rest were just his. The 2 of you close? Maybe he'd be able to find out some details before she unleashed whatever sort of attack was waiting. We were, surprisingly, she said with a nod and took a sip of her own drink. It's unusual for that to happen among my kind, however. What? For 2 council chairs to become friends? He asked, surprised at the thought. What? No, he was my father. This comment made him even more surprised, and it must have shown because she nodded. You probably aren't familiar with our people. To best eliminate any sort of hereditary favor for our young, and ensure equal footing, children are raised communally, and are very rarely aware of their biological parents. I'm a bit of an exception, since my parents were chosen for that experiment I mentioned. Oh. How do you choose names, then? We're assigned one. That becomes our natural name. Kuyina, Litero, Cavazor, these are all accepted and appropriate names for our species. Then we choose a private name, such as Vera. How many names are there to choose from? Wouldn't there be lots of repeats? She shook her head. Not too many. There are several thousand names to be picked from, and in general, since classes are named all at once, you don't have much conflict between strata. Most will test into patrol or military service, where core clusters are kept together for camaraderie purposes. Vincent took a sip of his drink. A lot of that flew right past my head, but I think I get the idea. Vera laughed and smiled at that. I must say, it's nice to spend some time with the illustrious shade in a more relaxed environment. When you were first brought to patrol, we assumed you'd be more of an oddity. Your ability to die in return would be useful, but that was all we really expected. You surprised everyone with your capability and your insight into criminal behavior, myself included, and I normally pride myself on my ability to analyze new resources. Well, I'm still an oddity, just a more useful one, Vincent said with a shrug. So why feel the need to get much more open with me? Surely there was a time before you became Supreme Council Chair. She nodded. Time, yes. Opportunity, no. You're still rather anathema to my people as a whole. Those who work closely with you have a chance to see how you operate, and even then, some don't trust you. Cavazor has taken quite a long time to start to open up, as you've noticed. But in the field, when you orchestrated the attack on the felons with the patrol hostages, the commandos had no hesitation in following your orders. There's a divide among us between job and personal life. Two Yervesh might work the same patrol beat for decades and never see one another outside of the job. For a council chair to pull you aside like this would be close to political suicide. But now that they've voted me for Supreme Council Chair, there's nothing they can do. Vincent had been sipping at his drink as she spoke, nodding slowly. I think I understand. But what's that word you used at the start? Anthem? Anathema. You're not familiar? No. Is it a traditional Yervesh word? No, it's common language. It means... She thought it over for a moment.
Taboo, forbidden. There's sort of an evil subtext.
She reached out to set a hand on his knee.
I don't mean to say you're evil, of course, but you are the shade.
She tilted her head a little to emphasize her point. Well, you might want to keep in mind that I never graduated from what the union calls core education. My counselor has been, expanding my vocabulary a bit, but there are times when I still get lost in a conversation.
No, my apologies. I'm so used to speaking with other high-ranking hierarchy officials, I forget to curtail my speech at times. But as I was saying, I've always intended to get to know you. You're an interesting specimen, the only one of your kind, lost in a strange new world. You face violence and conflict at every turn because of what we require of you, and you thrive in this environment somehow. It's very inspiring.
She smiled at him as he thought it over. She was a politician, so there was essentially 100% chance she was an excellent liar. But Vincent usually felt that he could feel the intent of Xenos who spoke with him, and he wasn't getting a sensation that she was lying about any of that. She thought he was here alone. Perhaps she wasn't a warden then. But he still couldn't quite get a good bearing on the Xeno. He studied her for a moment. Nothing about her seemed unordinary from other Yervesh women. Stony faces, steely eyes. Even in that nice dress she was wearing, there was this sense that she could pull a blade at any moment and drive it through his chest. Are you young to be Supreme Chair?
I am. Not the youngest, but certainly one of a small number. My ascension through the ranks has been quite quick. I tested straight into the general habitat of strategic thinking, for example.
You mentioned that before. What is Ghost?
Ghost?
She seemed confused and then laughed after a moment.
You love doing that. Acronyms. I never realized that. Is that why the dragons sometimes call us spooks?
She laughed again.
I never made that connection. Yes, well, it's essentially the Yervesh version of an advanced education facility. After core, we take aptitude tests. Those in their chosen field who show promise are sent there to further their learning. It's very unusual to test straight into it without experience in a field.
So, did you learn anything new there? Join any cults? He had meant that as a joke, but she gave him a very strange look.
Did someone tell you about Cypher? It's a very elite organization, and certainly not a cult.
What? Vincent started to try and say he had meant a joke, but she continued.
Dedicating oneself to changing the organization and behavior of an entire species on this sort of scale isn't any kind of joke. Just because I decline to comment on it to the other chairs doesn't mean I take it lightly. They simply wouldn't understand. That's why you're here, after all.
She leaned forward, and he leaned back a bit. Is it? Okay, so now he was even more worried about the poison in the drink. Or perhaps, did she actually have a blade somewhere? His fingers itched to feel the heavy weight of the magnum.
Yes, you're clearly the key to all of this. Forget that nonsense about the shade. Let the people have their superstitions, and we'll still guide them along the right path. They can't stop the tide of change once we set it in motion.
She stood up now, standing over him as Vincent leaned back further into his chair.
The actions of those who seek to undermine this great union shall be undone. Order and peace shall reign supreme. With your abilities and our resources, nothing is beyond our reach. Together, side by side, we shall usher in a new era.
Vincent was just about to pull his magnum free when the background music suddenly stopped, and the wall to his left flickered to life. Apparently, a screen.
Creature 88, this is Cavazor.
He looked up and saw the position the two were in.
Am I interrupting something? The house computer just pushed the call through when I asked to talk to Creature 88.
Vincent looked over at the wall. No, we're just having a friendly talk. What's up?
Well, I was told to inform you when Kirana had finished gathering the new team you wanted set up. They're gathered at a facility that's been provided by your counselor. Should I postpone the meeting? Well, my personal craft is on other assignments right now,
Vera said as she straightened her dress and took half a step back from Vincent.
Well, one of the dedicated patrol craft was on its way. They just finished ferrying some supplies. Oh?
She sounded both surprised and a little disappointed.
Well, I'm sure that... what I mean to say is, I don't know if Creature 88 is feeling up for that sort of meeting right now. He's probably a bit tired. Had plenty to do lately and a bit to drink, right?
She looked at Vincent. I'm feeling all right. I should probably start organizing the team so we can find the preacher as soon as possible. He frowned, as he felt like he wasn't getting something. What was he missing?
Oh, really? You're sure you feel fine?
She was starting to worry him. Maybe the poison was taking longer than she hoped to take hold of his body. But he needed to get out. Yeah, I feel fine. We'll have some more time to talk later. Unless there's something else? He asked and sipped at his drink. She looked obviously flustered now, as she looked from him to Cavazor on the screen, and then waved her hands for a moment.
No, that's fine. There will be another time indeed. And you're feeling fine, and I'm feeling fine, and... all of that is fine. It's all fine.
She nodded to Cavazor.
Okay. Well, the craft is just arriving. The sooner you leave, the sooner I can get him back on patrol.
Cavazor replied.
Good thinking. Always pays to be efficient with our resources,
the Urvesh woman said with a nod.
Courage 88, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure I'll see you again soon. If you'll excuse me, I think I should now go get some work done.
She nodded once more, and then walked promptly out of the room, leaving Vincent to look over at Cavazor, who blinked, and then slowly reached up to press the button to end the call without another word. Now alone in the room, Vincent gulped down the last of his drink and quickly scurried out down the hall towards the exit of the estate. What the hell had just happened? He felt a bit tipsy from the booze, but that was it. Maybe the poison was a dud? He was a new species after all. Or maybe she'd been planning to cut his heart out after that strange speech? Cypher? The fuck was going on? He pulled his jacket tight as he walked from the warmth of the building out into the cloudy platform. The craft was waiting and he quickly ran to it, climbing on board and grabbing a strap as it lifted off. He took a few breaths of the cold air as it brushed past his face. There were times he wanted to wear his mask, even when he wasn't on patrol, but he knew it gave the wrong impression. Thankfully, Kirana had saved him yet again, it seemed, though not on purpose, he knew. He wondered what sort of team she'd brought together, not to mention what sort of facility Mach had provided. The dragon hadn't mentioned it. Perhaps another generous gift? He thought about giving the dragon a call and asking about Cypher, and if he might know what sort of poison Kuyina might have used on him. But the lines were likely monitored. The craft began to dip down into the city now. He stared out at the open doorway at the various buildings and flashing lights that passed by. Sector 2, 3, 4. On down they went, through the structures. His head felt a little fuzzy as the lights seemed to be just a bit more vibrant. Or perhaps more blurry? He shrugged his shoulders a bit and tried to clear his head, but was finding it hard. Soon the craft took a turn somewhere around Sector 10. They were heading to some sort of small compound. There was an actual swimming pool out in some sort of courtyard. A main building with landing pads on the roof, and then perhaps a machine shop or some other industrial building off to the side. He couldn't quite figure out what it was as they landed on the roof. Vincent gave a nod to the pilot, who nodded back, and after Vincent stepped free, the craft rose into the air, heading off on his normal route. With that, he headed towards the lift door he saw and stepped inside. He wasn't sure where to go, so he started with the top floor. The lift stopped, and he was looking out over an empty floor of some sort of office building. The next floor down looked like it had been set up for some sort of testing lab. There were glass beakers on long benches and hoods above them, but nothing else on the floor. One more down, and he saw what looked like a bunch of cots that had been set up with some bags and luggage strewn about. Still no people. As he finally hit the button for the ground floor, he heard sounds. Music that he was used to hearing on the lower levels, not this far up above Sector 30. It throbbed in his ears without the protection of the mask. The sound dampening between floors must be excellent. When the door opened, his eyes were assaulted by a variety of bright flashing lights, and he could see a much larger crowd than he expected for a team of 12. Unless, for some reason, Kirana thought he meant 120? Or whatever a dozen was? 144? Whatever. Speaking of, he saw the reptilian Xeno approach him as he stepped off the lift. "Shade!" She seemed excited. She was wearing something that seemed to be a variety of neon colors, but as he tried to focus on it, the colors and lights seemed to shift, making it harder for him to really see what she was wearing. Whatever it was tight and showing off her curves, which reminded him of the first time he'd seen her. She sure had changed a lot in a few days. "Who are these people?" he asked as she got close, having to nearly yell to be heard over the music. "Friends, family, the team is being given to the Shade. Who knows when we will die, or when we'll see those we cherish once more. We are giving tonight to life and fun, so tomorrow we may dedicate it to death and discipline. It was Frey's idea." "Was it? Didn't seem like the sort of thing the old satyr would do." "She says it's an old satyr tradition. You'll meet the team soon enough, but tonight you must party with us." She had grabbed his hand and pulled him along the edge of the crowd. He wanted to tell her about Kuina and the potential poison in his system, but she wasn't making that easy as he watched her hips and tail sway before his eyes in that neon dress of hers. He heard some various people call out to him from the crowd as he passed by, and he turned his head, giving a wave. Soon she was leading him onto a stage where a Vernek with headphones was doing the DJ work. She motioned for him and the music stopped before he was suddenly handed a microphone. He looked out at the crowd of Xenos who had stopped and stared at him, and suddenly realized that they were expecting some kind of speech. The fuck was he going to say? He blinked, staring back at the crowd for a moment. Then he saw Detective Harmacad with one hand around the waist of his own curvy Vernek, and his other around the waist of one of those avian bird elf girls he had seen before. "You're all here tonight because either you or someone close volunteered to be a part of something new. Something dangerous. Something that will change the course of the very city forever. For centuries, only one species has patrolled the streets. Then I came along. Many of you only know me as the Shade. This is probably the first time you're seeing my actual face, but that's not important right now. What's important is that I'm here to help the city. You're here to help the city. We have a chance to make a team that will open the way for everyone else like you, who wants to help but simply wasn't born your Vesh. I'm putting the future in your hands. I will ask much. I will ask you to follow me into certain danger. The forces of evil that stalk the lower sectors will come for you just by associating with me. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to crush them!" As he said that last part, the crowd let out some cheers. "We start with a team of 12. They won't be given any fancy parades. They won't get luxury lofts in Sector 2. But they're going to help me tear down the felons and the black blood dealers who infest your homes. When you look back on this night, you'll be able to say I was there. I was there with the 12 that have now become 1,200 or 12,000. We will show this city and everyone in it that no matter who tries to knock us down, that we will stand, and stand proud." There were more cheers. "When Vernek," he scanned the crowd and pointed, "Ermani, Ortillians." He paused as he looked at some other Xenos but shrugged. "Whatever the fuck you are. Hell, we even have a satyr on the team, and none of us are dragons. That's how important this is. In 50 years, when you see them in uniform, out on the street, you'll know that's because of what we do here now. No longer will you be kept from protecting your loved ones and doing your family proud. If you want to fight for justice, then I'm fighting next to you. There were more cheers, and he handed the mic back to Kirana as he felt the blood pumping hard through his veins.
Tonight, my new brothers and sisters, we live! For tomorrow we might die!
Kirana then said, and lifted a strange multicolored drink he hadn't seen before. It must have been stashed by the DJ. She handed it to Vincent before grabbing her own. Then she clinked the glass against his and shot it back. 3 drinks in tonight. Vincent was likely going to have a hell of a morning. Then again, with the likely poisoned drink earlier, he might just be dead. Not wanting to let the Vernex show him up, he quickly knocked back the drink and then gasped, having to blink hard a few times. As the music started back up, and the lights started to flash once more, it was nothing short of a full assault on his senses. He shook his head then as he tried to clear it, but things started to get worse. Kirana took his hand, leading him down off the stage. She stopped short, however, and he nearly ran into her. When he didn't, however, she instead pressed back against him. He was surprised by the warmth of her body against him. He'd considered her features to be reptilian, but she must have warm blood in her to feel like that.
You're happy with the turnout?
Yes. He blinked and tried to focus on her, but his nerves began to burn a bit. The feeling of her smooth hand reaching up and rubbing over his face made him shudder, goosebumps rising. She looked up into his eyes, obviously concerned.
Is something wrong?
You feel fine?
Oh, yes. Was it the drink? Frey said dragons could drink it.
Ugh. He tugged at the collar of his jacket. Things are just... warm and tense. She smiled as he said that, and then tugged him close, letting him feel her curvy body press tight against his, guiding his hands down to her hips.
Isn't that the point of a good drink?
He suddenly didn't feel like worrying about the poison that drink might have driven into his body.
This might help.
She pulled out a small hard candy, it looked like, tearing open the wrapper and pressing it into his mouth. As he began to suck on it, he blinked and had trouble figuring out what the flavor was. It was great, like watermelon. Or maybe it tasted more like blue. No, it tasted like a stormy day in fall. Wait. What? He said aloud, and then quickly tried to cover it up. Is this
something for us to share?
He looked down at her confused before she pressed forward, kissing him, and suddenly he felt her long forked tongue working into his mouth. She held him close, as he felt the intense heat of her body seem to meld into his own, before she suddenly pulled back with a smile, and the candy between her teeth. I want that back, you know, he mumbled, and she suddenly pulled away from him.
Then you're going to have to get it,
she said with a wink, laughing as she playfully ran down a hall away from him. As he started to chase after her, he nearly stumbled thanks to the damn hallway suddenly spinning over, so he had to run along the ceiling. What? He saw her outside, making her way to a lift, but he caught up to her before the door closed. He was pressing against her once more, hands on her hips as he kissed her, trying to get the candy back. It wasn't until the lift opened and she slipped out from under him to escape that he looked over to the other Xenos in the lift, staring at him. He gave a slow blink, and then felt Kirana pull his arm to drag him out of the lift before it closed with him still inside. There were lights, laughter. He kept chasing her, but she'd slip out of his grasp at the last moment. Where was he? It looked familiar. He was on another lift all of a sudden. They were running down a hall that kept spinning as he ran along it, making it hard to keep up. But then she pulled him into a door, and things felt solid once more. Solid, but dark. Where were the lights? He tried to find the switch, but she dragged him forward and then shoved him down onto a couch. A very comfortable couch. He liked it and stretched out a bit. She stood before him, outlined by bright lights outside and the neon dress she wore. She set some sort of music on, and he was fascinated by the thump and throb of the beat as she danced before him, his eyes having trouble making out her body, as he was watching the colorful pattern of the dress sway and swish, contrasting with the lights outside. When the neon lights dropped to the floor, he began to panic, She'd melted into the floor. Fuck! Then, he jumped a bit as he felt her weight press down on him. What? That's not right. He couldn't just let her take advantage of him. So he gripped her hips, lifting and turning as he drove her down into the bed. Bed? Where had that come from? She howled out and he felt her legs wrapped tight around his waist. The heat of her body felt like it was flowing through him as he growled and pressed down. She howled again, and then she leaned up and he felt her teeth sink deep into his shoulder, making him scream. Yanking her head back for a moment, he growled, watching her lick something red off of her teeth before he kissed her once more. He was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling. His shoulder hurt. The very last of the candy was dissolving on his tongue. Something warm was pressed against his side. Where was he? Fuck it, he was too tired to care. He'd figure it out later and slowly closed his eyes. Voices came at him in the darkness, soft and gentle. Colors swirled and he could hear music. Everything was really nice. He smiled. It was time. Time for what? He opened his eyes. Glancing around his bedroom, he felt rather rested and refreshed. But when he tried to move, he groaned in pain. His shoulder hurt. Had he tweaked it last night during a workout routine? Wait, where had he been last night? He'd gone with Kuyina up to her estate. She'd given him a drink, then... Oh. His head felt fuzzy as the rested and refreshed feeling quickly abandoned him. He was trying to roll over, but something was weighing down his right arm. He pulled on it hard and heard something groan. It wasn't him. He flipped the sheets back, finding himself next to Kirana, who was entirely naked, her curvy, lightly scaled body bare to him, as she stirred due to his movements. He was surprised at how smooth and silky her soft body felt against his hand, her toned muscles shifting beneath the scales like it was a skin-tight bodysuit. He sure as hell wasn't a biologist, but he didn't think reptiles had breasts, and certainly not ones that looked so full and firm. And she was so warm. For a Xeno, her body was hitting on quite a lot of markers his human mind looked for, with regards to attractiveness. What the fuck had happened last night? And what was with the teeth marks on his right shoulder?